YouTube? It's Andrew here with Table Talk, and today we are breaking down my top 5 sports board games. Let's get into that list. So before we get into the list, I just want to clarify with this list, it is difficult to find good sports board games because I think sports are hard to translate to the tabletop. And I also think sports, maybe they don't have as much crossover with board game culture. And I think the reason why they're so hard to translate is because sports are a very fast-paced, lively thing, and board games a lot of times are turn-based and strategic, and they can be lively, but it's hard to simulate that fast pace. I also think a lot of times sports video games do it better because they're able to do much more, with that pace, managing a team, things like that. So I think a lot of the sports board games that do the best are either the ones that go all in on the dexterity and the fast pace, think foosball, air hockey, tabletop football. But I do think there are some that manage to tackle that managing of a team, running it well, or ones that really abstract it but still give you that sports feel. So those are the games you're going to find on my top 5 sports board games. Let's get into the list. My number 5 is my baseball game. Now I want to shout out Baseball Highlights 2045. It is a very popular baseball deck building game. I have yet to play it, but I've heard it very well reviewed. But my baseball game is a hidden, very hidden gem called Fantasy Baseball. Now, I don't think this is in print anymore. You can probably find it affordably, though, because it was not very popular. But this game takes that idea of playing fantasy baseball with your friends, crossing it over with fantasy characters as you are going to be running a team of like dragons and ghosts and ghouls and knights in a fantasy baseball setting. We're going to be playing through a season, the playoffs, and I think it's a lot of fun how they simulate the stats, and it brings to mind people that played growing up those baseball card actual games where you kind of simulate a season and see what happens. So this is a really fun job of you and a couple friends simulating a whole season of baseball, building up a team, and seeing what happens when you go head-to-head. That is Fantasy Baseball. My number 4 game is my soccer game. Now, I have been intrigued by a game that's been popping up on Kickstarter called Super Clubs, but for now, my top soccer board game is 11 Football Manager, the board game. This game, I think, is really best as a solo game, or if you and a buddy want to simulate through kind of a campaign or scenario of running a European football club, aka soccer. So in this game, it really does a good job of simulating managing the team, the players, rookies, your staff, your soccer club. So it tackles all areas of running a team, depending on what division you're in, what your owner's goals are. So just putting out the best team is not always going to be the best way to do it. So if you really want that idea of managing an entire soccer club, this is the game to do it. I think it stumbles a bit with the actual playing of the soccer games and how that mechanic works. And I think it can be a little complex, but it has really cool scenarios you can play out. I think it's best you and a friend, solo or 2-player. That is 11 Football Manager. Number 3 sports board game is my football board game, and this is Techno Bowl. Right behind me, it is a very popular Kickstarter, but I don't think they ever came up with a release after that. There's rumors they're going to re-release it, but this game does as best of a job as I think you can of actually simulating that action of being in a sports game, as you are going to be taking your football players, running plays, running routes with your different players, trying to make runs. Different players have different skills, and it has this really cool dynamic of how it works with cards and dice, and you actually moving them around a football field in head-to-head matches. So if you want that simulation, I would say look no further. Try to track down a copy of Techno Bowl. My number 2 sports board game is my basketball board game, and this is Basket Boss. Now, this does as simple of a job as any of simulating that idea of running a sports club. In this, you're running a basketball team. You're going to be playing through different seasons where different skills or players will matter more. Your sports teams players will progress or get worse or get better or retire, and you are going to be picking up new players, new staff members as you go in a very simple auction style mechanic that makes it very simple, very quick, and very fun to run a basketball team in Basketball. Before we get to my number one sports board game, if you guys have any suggestions of ones you've heard of, I am really intrigued to try to find the best sports board games. And I know a lot of the best ones aren't super popular because there's not any popular sports board games. Additionally, you could throw in a lot of racing games, but I'm going to save that all for a separate list because all those best sports board games would probably be racing games. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I never expect anyone to watch and always appreciate when you do. Let's get to my number one. My number one is Skate Summer. Now, this simulates sports. This simulates skateboarding and brings that Tony Hawk Pro Skater world to life. As you are skating around like Pelican Park trying to pick up different objects and do different tricks, and you're laying out trick cards literally on a skateboard trying to balance and be able to do as many tricks as you can in the air without crashing, and then getting the rewards for that, trying to get the most points by ultimately doing the most tricks using your skater the best in a very, very fun point salad skateboarding adventure that abstracts it a bit but still gives you that skateboard feel. That is my number one sports board game, Skate Summer. With all that being said, I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.